So before we get into it, let me just make something abundantly clear. This is not an indictment of any particular individual or of any specific approach to running a channel. I absolutely despise fabricated YouTube drama, and the channels that thrive on it are just catering to the lowest common denominator. The reason I felt it apropos to make this video at this time is that the other day I got involved in a thread on Twitter that absolutely took on a life of its own. I was initially responding to a post by Greg of Salazar Studios, and soon enough we were involved in a discussion with many other tech tubers much more popular than myself. The thread ended up going hundreds of posts deep and carried on for a good 24 hours. I'll link to the original tweet in the video description, but I also want to highlight a few different tweets by different people, and you'll see them come up in this general vicinity over the course of the video. The short version of the basis for this discussion was that Salazar Studios recently was offered the opportunity to review a monitor, and from what I gather it was a rather expensive unit. The manufacturer requested that after the review was completed, the unit be returned. I assume that the manufacturer was offering to pay shipping both ways, but I guess I don't know for sure. Now, for those of you who aren't necessarily familiar with how this industry operates, it's standard practice for the majority of products out there that if a vendor wants you to do a review, they will send you the item and not expect to get it back. This serves multiple purposes, as this relieves the time crunch for the reviewer and also ensures that the appropriate time is allocated to getting to know the product to ensure a full and thorough review. It also allows the reviewer to retain the product for use in future videos, or as a future point of comparison. Sometimes, however, a company may request that a product be returned. This most often happens with laptops, but on occasion it also happens with other things like high-end monitors. There are several reasons why this might be the case, but usually it's because a manufacturer may have limited samples and needs to make sure that they get into everybody's hands for a review. In this instance, Greg stated that he has never experienced this before and felt that this amounts to what is some amount of free advertising, which he is against. His feelings were that he should be allowed to either keep the monitor or at the very least give it away to his viewers. At this point, I chimed in and mentioned that it was not unusual for some companies to make these requests on occasion, and Paul from Paul's Hardware replied and agreed. This is, however, where the conversation kind of took a turn. Greg brought up that he felt he was not being appropriately compensated for doing the review if he did not get to keep the monitor, and also mentioned another possibility, that he be paid for his production work. Now let me be clear, it did not appear to me that Greg was saying he wanted to be paid in exchange for a positive review. What became clear over the course of the discussion was that he was proposing charging all companies a standard production fee for getting into the review queue, which would then cover his time to script, shoot, and edit. Now this raises several moral and ethical issues and generated a huge amount of back and forth between people on both sides of the argument. And here is my take. We as reviewers are under constant scrutiny regarding bias. I'm a tiny fish in this pond, and I've gotten my fair share of comments accusing me of being, at any given time, an Intel shill, an AMD fanboy, or an Nvidia crony. This is without any inference that I was being paid directly by any of these companies, which of course I certainly am not and will never be. I do, however, make some small amount of money from this channel via AdSense revenue, and as the channel grows, that ad revenue will scale accordingly. When considered in combination with the fact that I do indeed get some stuff for free, this is enough to offset my time costs at this point in the channel's young life. Adding money into the equation complicates things in a number of ways. As Steve from Gamers Nexus pointed out, there are actual FCC laws that govern the exchange of money when it comes to reviews. It might not be technically illegal, but taking money from companies and labeling it as a production fee in order to skirt this law seems unethical at best. I wholly understand the argument that if everyone is paying the same fee to have their product appear in your video, then there certainly remains the possibility that the reviews remain unbiased as everybody is on equal footing. However, whether you are accepting money from a company in order to do a review or accepting money from a company as a production fee, the end result is literally indistinguishable. Money is changing hands and a review is getting completed. I am not of the opinion that just because you call something by a different name, it changes the inherent nature of that thing. If I knew that every time a company came calling to get a review done of their new case, that I'd be padding my bank account, I can't imagine that I'd be able to resist stressing some of the benefits of their product, and perhaps even omitting some of the negative features from my review. Of course, I can't know for sure because this isn't a practice I'd ever engage in, and I strive to be as neutral as possible in my reviews, and I hope it comes off to you, the viewer. I was a little disturbed that there were some other tech tubers who joined in the conversation and agreed with Greg's original point, with Brian from Tech City saying that by not doing this, we are actually bringing down the whole industry. I can't imagine a scenario where this is a true statement. The give and take between reviewers and tech companies is the lifeblood of this industry. There's an inherent trust that exists between us that also includes you, the audience. This is basically a Venn diagram that you can think of like this. Trust is at the center of every relationship here, and without it, the whole ecosystem falls apart. Although my diagram may be somewhat flawed, I'm sure the general idea is conveyed. If money starts changing hands, eventually everything is in jeopardy of collapsing, as the driving motivations of all parties involved shifts. Now, this is not the same thing as paid advertising on TV, so please don't get the two confused. We as YouTubers are already compensated by other means. We do not need to charge for airtime like we're suddenly NBC. Jay from Jay's 2 Cents also made a good point that as you develop relationships with brands, the requests for returned review samples diminish. You can't simply make this kind of a demand up front from a company on your first dealing with them, and even likely on your 10th dealing with them. If they're willing to send you a product, it is enabling you to do a review, post content to your channel, make ad revenue, and even perhaps generate some sales through your Amazon affiliate account. You are still at a net benefit from the transaction, the only difference being that the company is not out the cost of the product at the end of the day, and you don't have one more graphics card on your shelf. Greg also made the point that he didn't like the idea that companies would be getting free advertising. To that point, I say, I'm not sure why that matters. This doesn't impact you as a reviewer at all. It's not like they're taking money out of your pocket, or anybody else's for that matter, in order to pad their marketing budget. If they spend $1,000 or $1 million on marketing, it should make no difference to how you perceive their product if your review is fair and honest. In the end, Greg's initial post actually spurred some very real and very important discussion on this topic that tends to pop up from time to time. He tweeted several times over the course of the exchange that he appreciated everybody's point of view and that he had actually been convinced that perhaps his initial view was misguided. For that I say kudos, man. It takes somebody with little hubris and the ability to think critically to recognize the valid points of others and modify their beliefs on the fly like that. I wish all internet discussions ended like this one did, with the exchange of actual, valid ideas between interested parties expressed with non-swear words and no name calling. So those are my thoughts on YouTube, reviews, and money. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. I hope I haven't offended anybody, as that was certainly not my goal, and I don't expect everybody to share the same opinion that I do, but I don't begrudge those who think differently. I think that in that case, we can just agree to disagree, although eventually I hope everybody comes around to seeing it the same way. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next video.